Part 26. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 251. After the assistant side was ruined by Makoto Takahashi, Yoshida and the Little Sea Otter also fell into the clutches of Makoto Takahashi in the real ghost mode. The final result was that the assistant side completely entered the mechanized doll mode and was mass-produced. He has produced a large number of comic manuscripts, mixed with some comics from the non-yokai era. After this battle, Little Sea Otter has changed his previous decadent style and worked hard to draw comics unremittingly. Congratulations! Congratulations! As for Yoshida, he didn't dare to go to Takahashi Makoto's house for 3 months to complete the work of collecting manga manuscripts, so he sent a Little Sea Otter to the door every time, while Yoshida himself hid outside the door and waited, so that when the Little Sea Otter fell into in times of crisis, decisively betray your teammates and escape. By the way, it was precisely because of the fear of being shaped again that the Little Sea Otter would draw comics desperately during this period, trying to use this as an excuse to shirk the tasks assigned by Yoshida. But he still couldn't escape what was coming. After Yoshida escaped for a while, he came to Takahashi Makoto's house again. It's not that the editor's conscience was condemned, nor that the editor's soul awakened, but that the Little Sea Otter worked hard to draw the manga manuscript in order to prevent him from stepping into Takahashi Makoto's house again. As a result, he stayed up too late in the winter and triggered suffering from illness this magical mission. I really don't want to go in. Looking at the door of Takahashi Makoto's house, and thinking about what happened that day, Yoshida's mouth kept twitching, and the look on his face became quite tangled. Here American really knows how to choose time. He is actually sick at this time. Hey. Is that guy pretending to be sick just to avoid coming to Cheng's house? Well, this possibility. Before entering Takahashi Makoto's house, Yoshida has already begun to plan that after collecting Takahashi Makoto's manga manuscripts, he will visit the sick Little Sea Otter-kun when he returns, but the most important question now is Takahashi's. Cheng's side. Although Yoshida has always complained about the era of monsters created by Makoto Takahashi, he is still looking forward to it. Especially when Makoto Takahashi tried to end the yokai era and launch a war against manga artists. With this courage, Yoshida could only sigh that being young is great. However, it was precisely because of this that Yoshida was quite dissatisfied. Takahashi Shinobu vowed that he would take this opportunity to kill all the cartoonists and then come to the top of the world. Although the statement has always been full of Takahashi Saichuji style, Yoshida has already burned out his passion for complaining about this. But the problem now is that Makoto Takahashi did not take any actual actions at all. The 3 comics still continued at a leisurely pace, without any so-called solemnity before the decisive battle, which made Yoshida quite speechless. Are you really a man in daily drama? Where's the promised total annihilation curse? Yoshida especially came to collect manga manuscripts today, but with the determination to die, he wanted to ask Makoto Takahashi about his future plans. Although the manga Ushio and Tora has begun to make arrangements for the final battle, the decisive battle that has not yet come has made Yoshida feel deeply powerless even as he was looking forward to it. If the serialization continues at this pace, let alone annihilating all the cartoonists, you should follow the rhythm of annihilating them all yourself. My beloved cat, it's rare that you come here by yourself this time. Have you really realized that you must die? Makoto Takahashi nodded with satisfaction and curled his lips in dissatisfaction. Or after this period of time. In practice, you have mastered the ability to defeat me alone, so you choose to fight me openly this time? Still upright, fight your sister. Facing Makoto Takahashi, who was in the 2nd grade state, Yoshida's brain completely shut down. The words he had prepared before could not be said at all now. Although Yoshida knew that Makoto Takahashi was working very hard during this period, working on the manuscript all night without a good rest, which resulted in some mental abnormalities, but Yoshida was quite satisfied with being able to communicate normally today. At least the person who opened the door to greet him wasn't a magic sword stabbing his throat. That was really great. Chen, about comics. Before Yoshida could finish speaking, he was rudely interrupted by Makoto Takahashi. My beloved cat, you came just in time. There is something I need to inform you. Makoto Takahashi dragged Yoshida into the house and sat across from Yoshida with a serious expression on his face. After pondering for a long time, then he slowly said, I am about to go to the 3000 worlds to find the magic secret medicine for my subordinate witch Rina, so in the next period of time, everything will be left to you. Remember, in this place while you are away, don't let your reputation be compromised. Leave, Could it be? Yoshida looked blank at first, then clapped his fist suddenly, as if he suddenly remembered something, and looked at Makoto Takahashi with a smile on his face. Is Rina-chan about to give birth? Chen, you are going to become a father. Hey. My beloved cat, you have obviously dedicated the rest of your life to the profession of Dharma saint, don't show that kind of expression. Takahashi Makoto rarely looked directly at Yoshida, turned his head, and put the table on the sofa. Chun and Liuli threw them to the ground, pointed to the drawer, and then turned to look at Yoshida again. I have already said it over there on the assistant side. Wait, Yoshida suddenly remembered something, looked at Makoto Takahashi with a puzzled look, and shouted, speaking of Chen, I wanted to ask before, when was the wedding ceremony of you and Rina-chan? Why don't I know? Is this the same problem again? Alas, the wisdom of mortals. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida helplessly. As early as when the world was in chaos, I had already signed a contract with the witch, and the whole world was changed because of this birth. Besides, how can ordinary people like you participate in my wedding? If you want to participate, you must at least practice to the level of a higher god. That is to say, you haven't held a wedding ceremony yet? This is really, Ogata-kun will definitely kill you, Chen. Yoshida said that he had the same sentiment as Fang Slime. There is such the second sick brother-in-law. For a father like this, I'm already worried about your future children. Hey. I'm just a cat, how dare you comment on my actions without authorization? The assistant also complained about this point. When Yoshida mentioned it again, Takahashi Makoto stared at Yoshida unhappily. My thoughts, is it something that mere mortals like you can guess? It feels quite loving to have my child participate in and witness the contract exchange ceremony between the Demon King and the witch. Hey, Chen, I really want to talk to your teacher. What kind of education model will make you have such a view on life? Yoshida has forgotten his responsibilities as an editor and started to worry. Takahashi Makoto came up with various matters. Let's do this, Rina-chan. The reason why a witch is called a witch is because, like me, I will not be bound by mere worldly ideas. Shaking his head disdainfully, Takahashi Makoto completely ignored the dignified look between Yoshida's eyebrows. Tapping the table lightly, hey, my companion cat, are you ready? Prepare? Prepare for what? Damn, what is going on? Before he could finish speaking, Yoshida saw the manga manuscripts on Sing-chun and Liuli. His face was full of shock and he jumped up from the sofa suddenly, this not to mention the astonishing number of comic manuscripts. Ding-chun and Liuli were able to cooperate with each other, take out the comic manuscripts from the drawer, put them in a box, and carry them over. As for Chen, your Liuli and Ding-chun, you have become a master through cultivation, right? You have definitely become a master through cultivation. My beloved cats, is now the time to talk about this. Makoto Takahashi moved the manga manuscript to the table, and then comforted the cat and the dog who were gritting their teeth at Yoshida. Sadaharu, Ruri, I will wait a moment. You are allowed to lift the restrictions and launch indiscriminate dismemberment attacks on my cats, so now, just wait quietly. Although it is still daytime, Yoshida said that he has already seen the shining death omen star in the sky. Yoshida, who had no integrity, immediately clasped his hands and apologized to Sing-chun and Li Yulai. "I'm sorry, I was too complacent before. This was completed by all the former assistants under my leadership. When I return in 3 months, the cartoonist side and editor side will be destroyed, so please stay tuned." Makoto Takahashi pointed to the manga manuscript on the table and said to Yoshida, "The situation is basically like this." Yoshida looked at the comic manuscript on the seat, and the expression on his face became much more serious. The previous scene of Takahashi Makoto and his assistant staying up late to catch up on work, Yoshida has a vivid memory. Under such circumstances, he was able to complete the manga draft 3 months in advance. Although Takahashi Makoto did not say how many times he stayed up late during this process, Yoshida could not say anything when he saw that Takahashi Makoto had lost weight. Out. I accepted the manga manuscript. Yoshida looked at the manga manuscripts on the table and decided that even if he stayed up all night tonight, he would read them all. The cartoonists have worked so hard, so as an editor, what reason do I have to take it easy? As for killing the cartoonist side and the editor side, forget it. No one expects you to do that. But I am looking forward to your shocking ending 3 months later, Cheng. Of course. Because I am a raging demon, and the manga artist Hohoin is fierce. Normally, his speech would sound extremely chubby, which would definitely put Yoshida into a state of contempt and ridicule, but today Yoshida did not do so. Because Takahashi Makoto looked pale at this moment, and he was obviously in a haggard state that he had not had a good rest, but it made Yoshida's eyes sore. Speaking of Cheng, such a quantity. Yoshida turned his head, trying to calm down his agitated mood, and began to use his skill of changing the topic. How can I move back alone? Hey, it's really useless at the critical moment, my beloved cat. Makoto Takahashi closed his eyes and leaned on the sofa. After complaining about Yoshida's weakness, he snapped his fingers and said slowly, "Don't worry, I have already arranged all this. Ding-chun, Li Yulai, I will leave the rest to you. I need to meditate. I knew it would be like this. I knew it a long time ago." Yoshida watched Sadaharu and Li Yulai enter the room with a group of cats and dogs, black threads wrapped around their heads, and turned to Takahashi Makoto to complain, "These cats and dogs, speaking of Cheng, when did you change your profession to become a druid?" There was no answer, no retort, and steady breathing meant that Takahashi Makoto, who was leaning on the sofa, had fallen asleep at this moment. "Oh, it's really..." Yoshida shook his head helplessly and covered Takahashi Makoto with the quilt on the side. "You have worked hard during this period, so take a good rest, Cheng." Cheer for a certain cat. After an unexpected business trip and high-intensity overtime work, a certain cat survived. "Well, I apologize for saying yesterday that I had to go on a business trip and didn't have the chance to say goodbye before I stopped updating. I'm very sorry." A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 252. Jing Zonghao is about to become a father, but this man can't be happy. Yes, for Jing Zonghao, who is about to become a father, in addition to feeling a little excited on the day he found out that his wife was pregnant, he also thought about the low salary that could barely support his family and the sacrifice he had to make for the birth of a new life. "Part of the expenses," Uncle Jing Zonghao said, expressing pressure. The joy and excitement of adding a new little life to the family have long since disappeared. As the wife's due date approaches, it also means that the baby is about to arrive. Perhaps the birth of a new baby will increase the burden of life in the future, but in the past few days, Jing Zonghao has completely put aside the worries and troubles in his heart. The melancholy that has been lingering on his face has completely faded and been replaced by what's more is expectation and joy. As usual, Jing Zonghao rushed to the hospital after get off work. Although his face was exhausted, he still hoped to be by his wife's side at all times. However, when Jing Zonghao walked to the door of the hospital, he saw a one-eyed man in a white coat stood at the door of the hospital, looking at the passers-by with a wary expression, and kept muttering something in a low voice. The person wearing the white coat is a doctor or a scientist. Although this statement is somewhat biased by common sense, if you appear at the door of the hospital, there is a 90% chance that it is a doctor. According to common sense, there should be nothing wrong with this, but that person is a doctor, but the person in front of him didn't look like a doctor at all. Oh, is this the legendary Fifth Research Institute? Oh, I feel it. The soul full of resentment and hatred is really the reason for dying with endless resentment. The man in a white coat, if there is standing thoughtfully at the door of the hospital, after pondering for a moment, a serious look appeared on his face. The promised day for the birth of the devil is coming soon, right? In order to prevent unexpected situations, it is better to save it first as usual, right? If the personal value fails to meet the standards in the future, I can also choose to load the file and refresh the personal value, and carry out scientific rescue measures. Research Institute, Archive, Brush Personal Value. Hey, this guy didn't sneak out from a psychiatric ward, did he? After carefully looking at the man in the white coat, Jing Zonghao had already begun to have this understanding in his mind, and subconsciously made a detour. Mortal, I ask you, are you a human? However, Jing Zonghao's way forward was blocked by that strange man. The black line on his face wasn't because he didn't understand what the other person was saying, but rather because he was frightened by the other person's question. The sudden question made Jing Zonghao once again confirm that there was something wrong with the person in front of him. He was obviously not someone with whom he could communicate normally. He wanted to ignore it, but the other person could predict his way forward every time and was unceremonious. The ground is in front of him, which means if you don't answer, you won't be allowed to pass. Do you still need to ask this question with an obvious answer? By the way, are there really non-human humanoid creatures in this world? Jing Zonghao looked at the other party helplessly, with a tangled expression on his face. He was already sure that the strange guy in a white coat in front of him must have escaped from a psychiatric prison. I am surprised to see your skeleton, it is rare to see in 100 years. Someone in a white coat, before he finished reading the customary opening remarks, he saw that the other person's face was covered with black lines, and he couldn't help but curled his lips, and his face showed he looked extremely disdainful and said, I just want to remind you that there is an obvious blackening aura around your body, and the Death Star above your head is shining brightly. If Takahashi Makoto, what are you doing? Suddenly a man wearing glasses complained loudly with an unhappy expression. At the same time, he quickly walked towards the strange man standing in front of Jing Zonghao and grabbed the man named Jing Zonghao. Takahashi Makoto's man's collar roared loudly, it's a time like this, can't you be normal? Mortal, remember my name, the arrogant demon god, the fierce Phoenix Academy. If you encounter something that cannot be solved in the future, just shout my name 3 times to the sky. Makoto Takahashi's words have not yet been spoken. After saying that, the man wearing glasses grabbed him by the collar. Hey, Ogata Slime, it's not good for you to be so impatient. The world is so beautiful and worth our struggle, so even if you can't think about it, don't choose to provoke me to trigger a suicide mission. Sorry to bother you, the man wearing glasses said politely to Jing Zonghao, and then dragged Takahashi Makoto towards the hospital, complaining as he said, I mean Takahashi Makoto, I have begun to worry about Rina-chan and the unborn child. Are you crazy? Looking at the 2 people drifting away, Jing Zonghao complained with black lines on his face, and then quickly entered the hospital. Oh, mortal, this is a fateful meeting. Makoto Takahashi showed a kind smile on his face and waved hello in a friendly way. After entering the ward, Jing Zonghao saw the man in the white coat named Takahashi Makoto. The corners of his mouth kept twitching, and he subconsciously exited the ward. After making sure that he was not mistaken, he covered his face and entered the ward again. Without hesitation, she rang the nurse bell and said, Miss Nurse, can we change to another ward now? Although he already had a deep understanding of Takahashi Sejouji's character and felt that being in the same room with such a person would be very stressful, Uncle Jing Zonghao did not choose to change the ward in the end. Of course, later Uncle Jing Zonghao complained about his wife more than once. This was the decision he regretted most in his life. Cartoonist, and celebrity. Hearing his wife's introduction, Jing Zonghao looked at the young couple in front of him in astonishment, and carefully looked at the blushing Ogatarina. Only then did Jing Zonghao realize that the girl in the same ward as his wife was not the girl who announced her retirement from the entertainment industry in a high profile before. Mortal, who allowed you to look up at this contracted witch with such eyes? Regarding Jing Zonghao's look at Rina, Takahashi Makoto showed a trace of anger on his face. I am His Majesty the Demon King who heals love. Mad Chi the cartoonist Phoenix Academy is fierce. If you dare to spy on the existence of the witch, even if you are a god, I will be killed by the magic sword. Ahaha, sorry, Jing Zonghao also reacted, scratching his head in embarrassment, looking at Makoto Takahashi, looking up and down. Wait a minute, cartoonist Phoenix Institute Kuma. Takahashi Makoto, a group of reporters came outside the hospital. Just when Jing Zonghao was about to say something, the ward door was suddenly pushed open, and Ogata Ag walked in with a gloomy face. You know what should we do? Hey! Those bastards are really haunting. Makoto Takahashi squinted his eyes, with a gloomy look on his face, and turned to look at Jing Zonghao, who didn't know what was going on. Mortals, the best in this world, the test of evil is coming. Will you choose to stay in the safe boundary, or will you choose to join me in the unlimited killing mode? What? What happened? Before he could figure out what was going on, Jing Zonghao saw Makoto Takahashi walking out with a sneer. For unscrupulous reporters, as long as they can get news about a star, they can do anything. As long as the news in hand can make tomorrow's headlines, everything doesn't matter. So what if Ogatarina is pregnant with Rocco now? What if a pregnant woman is about to give birth? Jing Zonghao scratched his head and turned to look at his wife lying on the hospital bed. There was also a hint of anger on his face. The fire at the city gate affected the fish in the pond. Jing Zonghao also understood this truth. As for disturbing others and interfering with others' normal rest, these things can be completely ignored by those Dogecoin reporters who have the moral integrity to feed their dogs. By then, those reporters who are swarming in will not care about other people in the same ward. In this case, it seems that it will also affect us, right? Jing Zonghao looked at Ogata Ag with a dark look on his face, complained helplessly, and was also prepared to follow the great demon king Takahashi Makoto and face the upcoming event. The evil in the world strikes back. Sure enough, I should have decisively chosen to change wards, but now is not the time to talk about that. Tisk tisk tisk, mortal, your consciousness is good, but in terms of strength, haha. Makoto Takahashi suddenly turned around and returned to the ward, gently patting Jing Zonghao's shoulder. Don't worry, the rest leave it to me. The arrogant demon god Phoenix Academy is here to attack. Seeing Makoto Takahashi slowly draw out the magic sword, Jing Zonghao's face couldn't calm down at all. Especially when he saw Makoto Takahashi licking his tongue, bursting into laughter and slowly walking out with a look of anticipation, Jing Zonghao expressed that he was under a lot of pressure. Although the damage of cold weapons is limited, and although he does not know the specific force value of Takahashi Makoto, Jing Zonghao has confirmed that the magic sword with cold light is a real thing, and it will kill someone if it is struck on the body. Hey, I can't worry about this situation at all. Seeing Makoto Takahashi rushing out in a hurry, the corners of Jing Zonghao's mouth kept twitching, and he turned to look at Eiji Ogata, who looked calm. Well, aren't you going to go out and help? Yeah, that's right. If that guy Makoto Takahashi accidentally kills all the reporters, it will be very troublesome to deal with it. Ogata Eiji raised his hand and looked at his watch, and Ogata Eiji thought for a moment. After that, he pushed up his glasses and said, "Then, let's go out in half an hour. After all, we still need to give some appropriate punishment to the ungrateful people. In half an hour, they will only be semi-disabled at most, there shouldn't be any deaths, right? Damn it. The doctor, nurse, and I insist on changing the ward. This is a weird family with middle school disease and dark glasses. I have been deeply hit by reality. In various senses, I have been feeling quite irritable recently and have begun to despair of the world. Therefore, I hope you will understand the various discontinuous and ineffective updates. A certain cat sincerely apologizes again. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Male. Chapter 253. Since you want to pursue the truth, according to the principle of equal exchange, I will definitely grant you appropriate despair. Makoto Takahashi, holding a magic sword, stood in the crowd, facing the zombie-like reporters. With a disdainful sneer on his face, "So, this is the final blow. EX." After Jing Zonghao hesitated again and again, he still planned to come out to help Takahashi Makoto, but after seeing the fragments of stumps scattered in the hospital yard, he decisively chose to activate the Dragonfly Return skill and returned directly to the ward. Let Ogata Slime swap appearances. By the way, the so-called limb fragments are just equipment in the hands of reporters. Although I don't know how the evil duo of Makoto Takahashi and Eiji Ogata dealt with the aftermath, Jing Zonghao never saw a so-called reporter again from that day until his wife was discharged from the hospital. Outside the delivery room, Jing Zonghao walked around anxiously and restlessly, while Takahashi Makoto on the side held the magic sword with both hands and entered the state of warrior sculpture. However, if you look closely at Takahashi Makoto, you will find that a certain middle-grade cartoonist was opening and closing his mouth constantly at this moment, as if he was mumbling something. The two wives actually gave birth at the same time on the same day. According to Jing Zonghao, this was an inevitable fate. Hey! Mortals, stop wandering around there. I have already set up a barrier that can prevent the intrusion of all uneasy factors, so just sit back and relax. Makoto Takahashi, who had been mumbling for a long time, finally stopped and said to looking at the restless Jing Zonghao over there, he persuaded, if you keep wandering around like this, it will affect the defense effect of the barrier. Hey, little brother Takahashi Makoto, your statement is completely unconvincing. Although Takahashi Makoto was right, what he got in return was a blank stare from Jing Zonghao. When Rina-chan had a stomachache before, if I hadn't tried my best to stop him, who was the idiot who almost killed the doctor who came a little late with a sword? Hey! I don't bother to explain too much about your mortal wisdom. Makoto Takahashi let out a long sigh and leaned lightly on the chair. Hey, mortal, you seem to want to explain to me before. What do you want me to say? Just listen to me and let me pass the time. Sorry, I don't have the heart to talk at this time. Jing Zonghao looked at Makoto Takahashi with a dark look on his face, although I know you are also worried and want to try to change the subject to relieve tension and worry. Humph. Your Highness the witch who has signed a contract with me will be the one who will rule the entire world with me in the future. At this time, it is just a step that must be experienced in the process of improving strength. That's right, but Makoto Takahashi, can you please reduce the frequency of peeking into that room a little? Just like Jing Zonghao, just stare at him every 3 to 5 seconds. You tilt your head and keep watching with your peripheral vision, aren't you tired? Friday, for most office workers, means the arrival of a short rest day, but for cartoonists, it is the arrival of a test. Because every Friday, The ranking results of Young Jump comics will be distributed to every responsible editor, who will then relay them to the cartoonists. Comics with poor performance will be notified of being cut off, while comics with good performance will encourage cartoonists. Therefore, every Friday, for cartoonists, it should be said that some are happy and some are sad. The ranking this time is, 4th place. Congratulations to you, Mashiro-kun and Takagi-kun. Editor Hattori couldn't wait to call a Jumumenha on the way here. Such a result is not occasionally. The duo has been quite powerful in recent times, overpowering Makoto Takahashi's 3 monster comics and firmly occupying the top 5 positions, not to mention a Jumumenha who are cheering. Hattori couldn't help but be happy. Like I said before, you can definitely do it. You've worked hard during this time. Haha, of course. The two good friends looked at each other and smiled. The yellow-haired glasses man pushed up the glasses on the bridge of his nose and looked at the rankings in the hands of Hattori editor, with a proud smile on his face. Didn't that guy Aiken say before that he would use the end of the monster era to crush and kill us? Now looking at this situation, it would be difficult to reverse it. Well, the best, you said after Aiken summoned the dragon. What should we wish for? We really hope that our comics will be animated as soon as possible, right? Hey, Chiren, have you also been infected by that guy Aiken's Chuyunibu? How can a creature like a dragon exist in this world? While Landai was complaining about his good friend, he was turning the pages in his hand. Looking at the sample issue, there was a puzzled look between his eyebrows, but I always feel that the style of the recent chapters of Chang's Tide and Tiger comic is a bit strange. Weird. You mean? Regarding the authority of his good friend in terms of painting style, Mr. Huang Mao Glasses paid great attention to it. He immediately pulled out the previous sample issue from the bookshelf and compared it with the one brought by Hattori editor. Sample issue, and said with a puzzled look, indeed. The recent chapters of The Tide and the Tiger feel a little different from the previous ones. Did you also notice, the smile on Hattori's editor's face faded? He took the latest sample magazine, flipped through it a few times, and stopped at the comic Inuyasha. He spread it out in front of the two of them. Look, when you read this episode of Inuyasha and the following episode of Natsume, do you feel? How could this be? Landai shouted in astonishment. How dare that guy Aiken do this? Isn't he worried that this will cause problems with the comics? What's the matter, Supreme? The man with yellow hair and glasses seemed to have not reacted yet, but after his good friend spread a few comics on the table, he looked at the comics with different names on the table, and his expression became astonished. Oh my God! What on earth is that guy Aiken thinking? Why do the styles of the 3 comics seem to be getting closer and closer? Although it is a rare thing for a cartoonist to draw a comic in his own style, there are not a few people who are like this. Hattori editor's expression was extremely serious. So before, Makoto Takahashi was able to create 3 different styles of monster comics with different styles, which shocked everyone in the editorial department. But recently, the styles of Makoto Takahashi's 3 monster comics are becoming more and more similar. Takagi-kun, what do you want to say? Hey, I said that the end of the monster era by Chang, could it be? The yellow-haired man with glasses pushed his glasses and showed an unbelievable look on his face. I said that guy Chang, could it be that he is planning to merge the 3 monster comics together? It is very likely. No. If Chang's in terms of personality, I will definitely do that. Landai showed a solemn look on his face. So when the 3 monster comics are combined, will it be the end of what Aiken calls the monster era? If the 3 comics are combined, then the reader's support rate. Looking at the votes on the comics ranking, editor Hattori couldn't help but take a deep breath and said to himself as if to comfort himself, but if the 3 comics are combined, it is easy to make the plot collapse, which may not be worth the loss. Others may do this, but Aiken. The duo of Yachin Mumenjai showed a solemn look on their faces and said in unison, Aiken will never make such a mistake. Damn it. Did that guy Aiken have planned it when he was serializing the monster comics? The yellow-haired glasses man was completely relieved and shouted helplessly, the earliest monster comic should be Inuyasha. So, did Aiken have planned to make such an ending as early as that time? The yellow-haired glasses man was very helpless. After all, he has always been very confident in his ability to calculate in comics. But after seeing Takahashi Makoto's terrifying layout, the yellow-haired glasses man was deeply shocked and felt a strong sense of frustration. Just from the change in style, it can be guessed that Takahashi Makoto is about to launch Super Fusion. In a sense, Aiken Mumanai, you are really amazing. Although there are still some deviations in the guess. A text message from Adu-chan, seeing his good friend fall into a state of low morale, Landai was about to say something to encourage him when his phone suddenly rang. It was a text message from the voice actor's sister. Such a thing. Sir, what happened to Adu-chan? Seeing Landai's blushing face after reading the text message, the yellow-haired glasses man instantly threw away the depression in his heart and asked with a gossipy face, what did Adu-chan say? Why did you show that expression? Landai was silent for a moment, and looked at his good friend with high morale. Akito, let's work hard together. The next comic will not only surpass Aiken and Nizuma-kun, but also fulfill our wish of animation. For Landai's sudden burst of small universe, the yellow-haired glasses man did not pay too much attention. His eyes were fixed on the phone in his good friend's hand, and his gossipy soul was burning. Hey, Supreme, you should know what I want to say, right? What did Yadu-chan tell you? No, nothing. Turning his head away, Landai didn't dare to look directly at his best friend's burning eyes, and stammered to change the subject. Anyway, Akito, now that we know Aiken's plan, we have to think of a strategy to deal with it. In that case. Ignoring Landai's attempt to change the subject, the yellow-haired man with glasses looked at his best friend persistently and began to enter the geographer's deception mode. The content of the text message is, Supreme, don't look at me like that, maybe a new plot can be created. Being young is really a good thing, hee. Seeing that Landai finally handed over his phone under the coercion and threat of his best friend, editor Hattori smiled and sighed, picked up the cup and took a sip of tea. That guy Aiken, actually became the father of 2 children. The surprised cry of the yellow-haired man with glasses made editor Hattori spit out a mouthful of tea. Meijo-kun, I heard that Rina-chan gave birth to a boy and a girl. Let's go visit them in a few days. By the way, I also want to be a mother soon yo, laugh. This is the message from the voice actor's sister, and it is also the source of Blue Dye's fighting spirit. Ahahaha, a cat who is about to be played to death wants to make the whole world go crazy. Is this killer combination skill of one shot and twins awesome? Ha 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 ha. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do SD Mao. Chapter 254. The only coffee shop on the street that can accommodate Takahashi Makoto now may be the legendary Maid Cafe. So according to the previous agreement with Jingzong Hao, Takahashi Makoto came here half an hour early. The reason why Takahashi Makoto arrived half an hour early was not because Takahashi Makoto didn't care about his family or anything, but because he was chased away by Ogata Slime Come Out. I originally thought that after Makoto Takahashi upgraded to become a father, his middle-class character might be more restrained, although he didn't expect Takahashi Makoto to stop being a middle-class boy instantly. Ogata Ag still had such a glimmer of hope in his heart. After all, responsibilities can force people to grow and mature, especially men. It's a pity that Ogata Ag really underestimated the madness of Takahashi Makoto, who was suffering from terminal Chuyunibu disease. My stupid son, you only need to understand one truth from now on. Except for your mother, the witch Rina, all women in this world are like playthings. Therefore, inherit my will and become the proud leader. Demon Lord, Turn every woman you meet into your toy slave and weapon. No matter whether you are a royal sister or a Lolita, you would rather kill 30,000 people by mistake than let one person go unnoticed. The one-eyed man said this to the baby boy who was just 2 months old in his arms. He looked at the baby girl over there, and someone frowned and added to the baby boy in his arms, "Well, I just forgot to say, as for your sister, a qualified disciple can make a great contribution to your Crystal Palace dominance." When Ogata Ag heard that Takahashi Makoto had so brutally instigated his son, his face was filled with black lines and the corners of his mouth kept twitching. If he hadn't been worried about waking up the two sleeping little angels, Ogata Ag would definitely ignore the difference in force and fight to the end with Makoto Takahashi. Grabbing the boy from Takahashi Makoto's hand, Ogata Ag stared at Takahashi Makoto with an unkind look. At the same time, he pointed to the door and motioned Takahashi Makoto to go out and have a good chat about life, education and so on. Makoto Takahashi also nodded in agreement, but Makoto Takahashi's next words and deeds made Ogata Ag's anger reach the limit. Searched can on Google. My little princess, listen carefully to my plans for your future life. Makoto Takahashi picked up his sleeping daughter, with a doting look on his face, but the words he spoke were quite devilish. In the future you will definitely replace Witch Rina and become the true princess, however, this is not what I expect and desire. Yes, as an existence that inherits my will, a mere princess cannot do it, even if you are in the future. To become a resounding existence like the onion swallower is just a princess. But this is better, because if she becomes a princess waiting for a prince or a hero in a fairy tale, oh, those fairy tales are all lies. The so-called princess waiting to be rescued is just a reward for the slave girl who wins over the brave or the prince. Although she has the status of a princess, it sounds a bit high-end, but according to current terms, it is just a high-end product with a higher price. Hey, Takahashi Makoto, are you really a man to say this? It seems that when you called Rina-chan before, you also addressed her as princess or something, right? But Makoto Takahashi, although you are not a hero or a prince, but you captured Princess Rina and came back and gave birth to a child, can you be said to be worthy of being a demon king? I'm talking about Makoto Takahashi. Ogata Ag stared at Makoto Takahashi with murderous eyes, his tone full of coldness, because of his understanding of someone's Chuyonebushiku Imao ability. I am really worried now that when these two children grow up in the future, with your education model. Ogata Slime, how can a mere mortal like you understand my thoughts? After replying to Ogata Ag disdainfully, Takahashi Makoto gently stroked his daughter's face. My daughter, you want to become a queen. Except for me, all men can be trained and educated as loyal dogs. In order for you to meet my standards, you should continue to practice it from an early age, such as beating Ogata Slime. Then torturing your stupid brother, such as playing with the little sea otter. Well, there are also things like whipping my dependent cat. Because there are a lot of these toys, you can play with them as you like, and if they break, you can give them to Ding Chun-Li Yulai. Deal with it, there are still a lot of spare parts in stock anyway. Makoto-kun, what did you say there are more? Rina came out of the bedroom and looked at Makoto Takahashi with sleepy eyes. She turned around and saw Eiji Ogata with a black line on his face, with a puzzled look on his face. Brother, are you here too? Takahashi Makoto, I think we need to have a good talk. Ogata Ag handed the boy in his arms to Rina, looked at Takahashi Makoto with an unkind expression, and took deep breaths continuously to try to suppress his anger. About your education, the child's. Makoto-kun, did you say something strange again? Seeing Ogata Ag's appearance, Rina couldn't laugh or cry, and turned to look at Takahashi Makoto. Before, I wanted them to become pirate kings. Last time I said that I wanted them to become pirate kings, let them become Sians, and what did they say this time? Want to become the lord of demons and demons? Or become a partner of justice? Takahashi Makoto, until now I am finally sure that I was too naive before, Ogata AG pondered for a moment, then turned to Rina and said, Rina, go pack your things now and come home with me later. If I stay here any longer, I'm really worried about the future of these two children. One Piece, Naruto, huh? I've already become a man with two fathers, and I still believe in those unrealistic dreams. I'd better watch less comics. Luffy-kun, and Naruto-kun, this ungrateful Ogata slime is now mocking your ideals. Don't worry about me, turn on all the second-level immortal modes and kill him together. No, as my successor, how could I be like some ants and have such superficial ideals? Makoto Takahashi let out a long sigh and stared at the two sleeping little angels with a look of conviction. He said, in the future, you will become the great demon king who will destroy mankind and destroy the world. As a result, Takahashi Makoto was defeated by the Ogata brothers and sisters and was driven out of the barrier. The memory mode is over. Hey! That Ogata slime guy is really... He complained unhappily, ignoring the constant twitching of the corners of the man's mouth across from him. Makoto Takahashi lifted the coffee on the table and took a sip, complaining with a resentful expression. So, mortal, you specifically chose this place to ask for an audience with me. What do you want? By the way, I really want to suggest changing places. Jing Zonghao looked at Makoto Takahashi completely speechless, let out a long sigh, and threw the documents in his briefcase on the table. But forget it, before what I've always wanted to tell you is that the script was probably written by you, right? Huh? This is... After hesitating for a moment, Takahashi Makoto flipped through the documents in his hand, with a smile on his face. It seems that my initial intuition was very effective. It turns out that you have already joined. You are under my command. However, humans who can obtain this are considered to be the most powerful beings in the world. Mortals, tell me your name. All concealment is useless in front of this work. When I heard your name before, I really wanted to ask you. Jing Zonghao curled his lips and stared at the document in Takahashi Makoto's hand. Although the plot is quite good, the ending is really, is it too, should I say that he is worthy of being the cartoonist Phoenix Institute? My strength is beyond what you mortals can imagine. Makoto Takahashi threw the document aside with some annoyance, kept tapping the table with his fingers, and kept looking at Uncle Jing Zonghao, with a demon-like expression on his face. With a smile, he subconsciously licked the corner of his mouth. I feel the dark aura lingering on you, Tisk. I am very curious about what happened that caused a mere mortal like you to have such a huge resentment. Are we talking about the game now? Facing Makoto Takahashi, who seemed to see through everything about him, Jing Zonghao was silent for a moment, then turned his head and tried to change the topic. As the person in charge of this game, I have heard about the general situation. In my opinion, the plot level of this game is quite high, so I am very curious, what do you think? There are two comparable plots. I also want to know, among the three plots, who is more powerful? Plans for future duels, plans for future duels. Oh, Makoto Takahashi sighed, his eyes drifting to the distant sky. In the age of monsters, after this is over, there will be no more opponents for me in the human world, so I can only choose to fight with myself to kill time. Alas, life without enemies is really as lonely as snow. Jing Zonghao was under a lot of pressure, not only from Takahashi Saichu's 2-point speech, but also from a large group of maids watching. Seeing the people around him whispering and laughing while watching, Jing Zonghao really wanted to end the conversation, because the guy in a white coat opposite him was so embarrassing. Now Jing Zonghao finally understood why those coffee shops in the past would turn him away when they saw Makoto Takahashi in a white coat, and at the same time give him sympathetic looks. It turns out that the fault was not mine, nor the coffee shops that suffered so much, but Makoto Takahashi. Ahem, teacher from the Phoenix Academy, let's call you Cheng. Jing Zonghao now tried his best to end the conversation as soon as possible and get rid of the middle school guy in front of him as soon as possible. Can you let me take a look at what you say? What about the other two plots? The fingers tapping on the table stopped. Takahashi Cheng stopped the smile on his face and stared at Jing Zonghao carefully. After a moment of silence, he nodded and took out a piece of yellowed paper from his jacket pocket. Yes, as long as you sign this contract with me. As my subordinate pet, you will naturally have the right to obtain relevant information. Yes, this is an exchange of equal value. No longer confused, no longer hesitant to say, a certain cat is resurrected disease. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 255. Nanny? Did that group of ants launch a rebellion in District 11? Humph. Need to say more about the result. Of course, all of them were killed. Hey, just because of such a small thing, I need to summon this phoenix. The murderer of the hospital is here in person, my companion is a cat, you are really a useless person. Regarding Makoto Takahashi's performance, Jing Zonghao just glanced at it, and then continued to frown and think. After all, this was not the first time such a situation had happened. It's not that Jing Zonghao is very familiar with Takahashi Makoto, but in less than an hour of conversation, Takahashi Makoto has answered the phone like this several times. For example, Ogata Slime, are you still in my barrier? Hey, you're still hanging on. Sure enough, slimes don't have such a thing as shame. Hey, it's just a slime, how dare you hang up on me? Well, I already know that the Dark Holy Sea has obtained that thing. Now you need to go to the Holy Mountain to ask for help. That's right. You must smash the conspiracy of those madmen before the ceremony is completed. I know the situation is critical, but there is nothing we can do now. I will deal with the enemy forces. As for the important task of saving the world, I will leave it to you. The combat plan is for P1 to execute the first plan, and P2 to arrive at the designated location 20 minutes later. Q1 follows what was said before, and after going deep to lure the enemy, immediately replaces it with a new body Wings of Freedom, and then directly breaks into the enemy's main formation. For our hegemony, this battle must be won. Huh? What did you say, which? Huh? Those ants are really bored. What about the professional ethics of a cartoonist? If you don't draw well at home at this time, you suddenly launch a surprise attack on the barrier. Sure enough, you know that I'm not at home, so why are you so bold? Well, it doesn't matter, leave it to Sabas-chan, let him feel the infinite terror of my barrier. After finally stopping all kinds of weird phone calls, Takahashi-chan drank the coffee on the table in one gulp, looked at Jing Zonghao impatiently, tapped his fingers on the table, and said with an unkind expression, "Mortal, as you can see, my time is quite tight, and you are hesitantly wasting your time. Do you really have any intention? Time is tight, attempts." Jing Zonghao shook his head feebly, feeling a deep sense of powerlessness. The first phone call at the beginning was relatively normal. After all, Jing Zonghao still knew about the Ogata slime that Takahashi Makoto called, but what happened to the subsequent calls? Judging from your phone calls that are full of second guessing, I can't feel it at all. Hey. Has it started again? Looking at the vibrating cell phone, Takahashi Makoto's face became a little ugly, and he complained to Jing Zonghao, who was still thinking, "Mortals, let's talk about the contract later. You go back and activate the check and balance skill, think twice before contacting me. Now a group of ants are trying to break through my barrier, I need to go back and educate those rude people, the wheel of fortune has begun. Turn, this is all Steins, Gates' choice, I hope you can give me a satisfactory answer when we meet next time." Makoto Takahashi left in a hurry because there were many things to do next. For example, all members of the cartoonist side form a team to clear the dungeon of witch of postpartum weakness, such as driving away a slime that wanders in and refuses to leave, such as summoning all members of the assistant side to return to combat status, such as going home to continue educating one's own skills. Son and daughter. Although Takahashi Makoto left a large number of manga manuscripts before, he was busy taking care of the witch and his children during this period, so he did not have time to draw manga manuscripts. The inventory of manga manuscripts in Yashida's hands was almost exhausted, so Yashida came to visit today. During the visit, in addition to seeing Takahashi Makoto's two children again, the more important thing was to ask Takahashi Makoto whether he wanted to continue serializing the comics or choose to take a break for a while, although Yashida already knew that Takahashi Makoto Chiao-cheng will most likely choose the former, but he still needs to seek his opinion on this kind of matter. Mr. Yashida? Why are Mr. Yashida here? Just when Yashida was about to knock on the door of Makoto Takahashi's room, he heard a trembling voice, "I'm going back. I don't have my manga yet finish." "What's going on, Hiramaru-kun?" Yashida turned around and saw the little sea otter trying to sneak away. His face darkened, and he grabbed the other person's shoulders with a gloomy smile on his face. "On the phone before, you said you wanted to draw comics at home, why are you here?" "Gee, Mr. Yashida, please listen to my explanation." Looking at the expression on Yashida's face and his increasingly weird smile, the little sea otter stammered while looking around. Someone's figure immediately shouted loudly, "Teacher Fusion, help!" Teacher Hiramaru is still as afraid of Yashida-kun as ever. Haha. The silver-haired brother Fukuda walked up to the two of them and said hello with a smile. "Hey, long time no see, Mr. Yashida. Aiken Momenha and his new wife the master is still on the way, and it seems that no one else has arrived. Let's wait here." All members of the cartoonist side were dispatched. In addition to visiting Makoto Takahashi, they also had another purpose, which was about the duel between cartoonists. Previously, Makoto Takahashi frantically launched a bet with all the cartoonists. Now the results of Makoto Takahashi's 3 comics are not very satisfactory. Although they have not yet reached the state of being crushed, but if it continues like this, maybe Takahashi Makoto really has to give up comics for a while and go search for the Dragon Balls for everyone. After all the cartoonists arrived, they entered Takahashi Makoto's house with Yashida. Although they were a little surprised that Takahashi Makoto was not at home, they did not leave immediately, but gathered around Takahashi Makoto's 2 children. By the way, after seeing the 2 cute little angels, some of them showed some shy expressions on their faces, such as a violent girl, a voice actor's sister, a little sea otter, and a blue idiot. Tisk. Although Sebastian said before that all the cartoonists were dispatched this time, I didn't expect the defense barrier to be broken so easily. After Takahashi Makoto returned home, he looked at the people in the house with a helpless look on his face, but after looking around, he showed a happy smile on his face. "I didn't find the expulsion target Ogata slime, it seems that it has been eliminated." Well, in view of you killing Ogata slime, I can grant you an intact corpse in this duel." "Huh," the silver-haired guy looked at Takahashi Makoto in astonishment. "I say, Cheng, you still dare to say that now? Do you know how your comics are doing now?" "Cheng, this time we came here, actually want to ask you, how are you preparing for Dragon Ball?" The yellow-haired man with glasses looked at Takahashi Makoto with a smile. "Although it feels a bit unfair, I don't think you mind, right? The content of the previous bet is very cruel. If there really is a dragon, I hope I can have endless money and never have to work again." The little otter was killed by the destructive death light emitted from Yashida's eyes before he finished his great wish. Only Eiji Nazuma remained silent. After carefully looking at Makoto Takahashi, he showed a satisfied smile on his face and said to Makoto Takahashi seriously, "Teacher Howin, you have planned it from the beginning, right? But I won't lose. It seems that I was right before. It is really impossible to hide it from you. Should I say that you are worthy of being the king of Black Flame?" Looking at Eiji Nazuma secretly raising his finger to himself, Makoto Takahashi flashed a trace of surprise on his face and took a deep breath. "Since you already know my plan, you must have predicted the result, right?" According to the current situation, the chance of winning is only 40%. Eiji Nazuma narrowed his eyes and his expression became a little serious. So, Teacher Howin, Your Majesty the Demon King of Healing Love, are the Dragon Balls ready? Well, after being resurrected and weak, let a certain cat gradually cultivate the feeling of typing and recall the will of the second year meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 256. How could this happen? The assistants who were summoned all exclaimed in unison about Takahashi Makoto's decision. As the temporary leader of the assistants, Ding Ding looked at the other people's eyes like fellow deist. You go first, he asked Takahashi Makoto. Chen, this is different from what you said before. Didn't you say that in the next 3 months, we can not work and arrange our own time freely? Now it is only 2.5 months. It seems that the number of drawings can last for 2 weeks, right? Although you are mortals, you can't be so unwilling to make progress. Makoto Takahashi had a look of hatred on his face. He distributed the comic manuscripts in his arms to his ugly-faced assistants and spread his hands helplessly. Although I really want to continue resting, the King of Black Flame seems to have noticed my plan, so he is now launching a surprise attack strategy. And as the 4 people under my command, you only need to strictly implement my plan. Just the plan, no right to complain. As I write this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. So don't brag about Haikao at the beginning. After complaining dissatisfiedly, Ding Ding and others still took over the comic manuscript and got to work. Still in the same way as before, I am responsible. Wait. Before that, take a look at the manga manuscript in your hands. Well, to be precise, it should be the content of this episode of The Tide and the Tiger. A look of anticipation flashed on Takahashi Makoto's face. This chapter of Tide and Tiger is the beginning of the closing performance of the entire era of monsters, so before you start painting, you need to bring your own spirit and soul into it. There is nothing wrong, only the real soul is poured into it. Only those who create comics will be successful. This is the exclusive secret of the crazy cartoonist Phoenix Institute Jigen. Hey, we got it, so now Chang, can you just be quiet? Tintin interrupted Takahashi Makoto's words unceremoniously, waved his hand helplessly, took out the comic manuscript of Tide and the Tiger, spread it on the table, and watched it with the rest of the assistants. Although many cartoonists will ask their assistants to read the comics carefully before starting to complete the manga manuscript so that they can reduce questions during the drawing process, Takahashi Makoto has never asked his assistants like this. If you become mindless puppets, then I would rather use Misaka's sisters as assistants. At least in terms of work efficiency and eye candy, Misaka's sisters with 3 natural black attributes are much better than you. When Ding Ding first became an assistant, he once raised questions about Takahashi Makoto's model, but was scorned and ridiculed by Takahashi Makoto. Having a copy of Sister Pao's gene is better than you. I use a lot, just because the barrier is too small to accommodate tens of thousands of sisters. Otherwise, do you think that you can be included in my eyes just by virtue of your mortal body? Humph, don't be kidding me. This is the arrogant manga artist Phoenix Inferno, the arrogant demon king who will become the overlord of the world. The assistant's job is to assist the cartoonist in completing the cartoon manuscript. Of course, in addition to the necessary salary, the assistant can also learn a lot in the process. In addition to the creativity of the plot of a comic, the quality of the drawings is also very important, such as the size ratio of the characters in the comic, the connection between comics, etc. Each cartoonist has his own style for these things, too. Things that those who want to become cartoonists' assistants in the future must learn and master. Just like the comic Tide and Tiger I am reading now. Whether it's the style of painting or the storyline, although Makoto Takahashi has a rather middle-of-the-road personality, his assistants are still convinced by his ability in comics. Regarding this, the person who has the most say is the assistant Jing-hee on the assistant side. Jing-hee's comics once made it to the serialization meeting of Shonen Jump. Although they were not successfully serialized in the end, and were almost deceived by a commander with ghastly glasses and an editor with a bad personality, they even almost went astray, but fortunately the kind-hearted cartoonist Phoenix Academy takes it in, otherwise the consequences would be really hard to predict. At least Shizuka learned a lot from Makoto Takahashi during the time he became his assistant. In the comic Ushio and Tora, due to the white-faced man, nearly 95% of humans and monsters in the world have been brainwashed to forget the good pairing of Zyushio and Ahu. The alliance originally formed with the white-faced man as a common enemy is now forced to fall into internecine strife. At this time, the white-faced man also breaks the long-standing seal and prepares to sink the entire East continent in the comics to the bottom of the sea. They have to face the betrayal of their former comrades, and they also have to face the white-faced man who is now in the best fighting condition. Although Xiao Chao and Ahu still have a few teammates, no matter how you look at it, this situation is extremely dangerous. It is indeed my favorite plot, but... Jing-hee looked at the comics silently, without saying much, but looked at Makoto Takahashi doubtfully. I can also draw such a plot, so why? What would teacher Makoto Takahashi say like that before? Ruko, you must watch this Times the Tide and the Tiger seriously. After receiving the summoning seal from Takahashi Makoto, Shizuo was the first to arrive at Takahashi Makoto's house. Before sitting down for a few seconds, he seeing the serious expression on Makoto Takahashi's face, he said, I think this chapter of the manga should be able to enable you to unlock some new skills, right? Although Takahashi Makoto usually speaks in a tactful way, he can produce unexpected effects in some aspects. So when he heard Takahashi Makoto say this, Shizuo he was very confused and wanted to ask, but looked at Gao Qiaocheng. Qiaocheng had a weird smile on his face and finally gave up. When the assistant started reading the comics, Shizuka didn't pay too much attention to it, and repeatedly thought about what Takahashi Makoto said before. Oh, it's about to start, right? Looking away from where everyone was watching, Takahashi Makoto gently patted Jing-hee on the shoulder and whispered in his ear, Ryuko, be careful next time. What to pay attention to? Shizuka looked back at Makoto Takahashi speechlessly, and found a you-know look on his face. He sighed helplessly and continued to read the comics. Seeing that the white-faced man in the comics was invincible and killed a large number of monsters with a flick of his tail, Jing-hee did not exclaim like the other assistants, but frowned and continued reading. When he saw Xiao Chao being the white-faced man broke into the sea, was bewitched by the beast's spear, condensed hatred and anger, and when he broke out of the sea, the puzzled look on Jing-hee's face became more intense. This is... Turning the next page, I saw that in the comics, Zyuko's stunning killing blow did not achieve the expected success. Instead, the white-faced man shook the invincible beast's spear into fragments. The white-faced man is the source of hatred. It is naturally impossible for Xiao Chao, who is dominated by anger and hatred, to subdue the white-faced man. At this time, there is still time before the entire East continent sinks into the sea. All humans and monsters are falling into endless despair. This narration heralded the end of this chapter of the comic, but Jing-hee fell into deep thought. Seeing Shizuo He's thoughtful look, Takahashi Makoto nodded with satisfaction. After whispering a few words to Ding Ding and others, the assistants looked at the two of them doubtfully, and then left quietly. Where are the others? Have they all left? After Jing-hee exited the meditative state, he found that only he and Takahashi Makoto were left in the entire living room. He pushed up his glasses in confusion. After receiving confirmation from Takahashi Makoto, Shizuka picked up the manga manuscript on the table again. After flipping through a few pages with a complicated expression, he pointed to the last page and asked in a low voice, "Teacher Takahashi Makoto, this is what do you want to tell me?" Essay, who knows this? Makoto Takahashi looked at Jinghee, who looked depressed, bent down and picked up Liuli, who was acting cute at his feet, and said as if to himself, "Although I am a healer and the devil of love, but I have no interest in changing other people's lives." Eh? Is that so? Jinghee looked at Makoto Takahashi with an expression of "Will I believe you?" But this comic is. You've already talked about this, don't you understand? Alas. Liuzi, you are so superficial. Makoto Takahashi looked at Shizuo River in confusion. If you choose to become a dependent of darkness, you must have the consciousness to plunge into darkness and despair. At the beginning, your comic Zion Ben could not be serialized because it was too dark, so you came back to practice here. What do you think after reading this chapter of Tide and Tiger? You have extraordinary talents in this area. As long as you persist, I firmly believe that you will be able to become a true love warrior like me in the future. Makoto Takahashi put Liuli on his head with a look on his face. Looking at Jinghee seriously, "My beloved cat and the commander have told me before that the reason why I chose you to be my assistant is to subtly change your personality and thus your painting style, but as I said before, I have no interest in changing other people's life choices." So what? Jinghee was not too surprised by Takahashi Makoto, who was extremely serious at the moment. Is it really because he belongs to the dark world? I'm not blaming you, I just think that your previous ideas were very good, but there are some problems with the method you chose. After all, my cat and the commander are the top leaders of the organization, and they have always been enemies of us. So you are no match when you are alone, this is normal. But Makoto Takahashi showed an expectant smile on his face, and stretched out his right hand towards Jinghee. "Hey, Liuzi, let the darkness curse you. Come, let despair and hatred cover the whole world. Are you interested in trying such a loving thing?" After Shizuka hesitated for a moment, he stretched out his right hand and held Takahashi Makoto's right hand tightly. There was a puzzled look on his face, and he asked puzzledly, "But according to the current plot of the Tide and the Tiger, in the end, the white-faced one will definitely be eliminated, right? Through a desperate plot, and finally achieving a great reversal, isn't this a common method used in many comics? Even this Tide and Tiger is the same. There is nothing wrong with this." Makoto Takahashi squinted his eyes, with a happy smile on his face, "But don't forget, in order to complete the Super Fusion card, the dark power of everyone's resentment and hatred has been gathered, so after use." Well. Although he felt that interrupting others was a rude behavior, Jinghee hesitated for a long time and chose to do so. "I have always wanted to ask Mr. Takahashi Makoto about you, the so-called Super Fusion, what exactly is it?" Takahashi Makoto looked at Jinghee River in astonishment, then sighed silently, shook his head helplessly, and patted the other party's shoulder in comfort. "Even the dualist soul has been wiped out, the power of the organization is really unfathomable. So what exactly is Super Fusion? And?" Jinghee River looked at Takahashi Makoto speechlessly, slowly pulled out his right hand, and now suddenly regretted the behavior of teaming up with Takahashi Makoto just now. "What the hell is the dualist soul?" "In short, it is." Takahashi Makoto told the whole plan to Jinghee River, and seeing the astonished expression on the other party's face, he nodded with satisfaction. "That's right, it's this kind of longing eyes. Although my cat knows something vaguely, he doesn't know the specific plan. You don't have the authority to know yet. So mortals, do you understand the true love and healing now? When the comic is finished, Mr. Yoshida will definitely go crazy." Jinghee River's mouth twitched constantly, but a glimmer of excitement flashed in his eyes. "But this kind of ending is what I have always pursued. So Ryoko, for the glory of darkness, for true love and healing." Takahashi Makoto's face once again showed a strange smile, become the sharpest sword in my hand, and make a victory oath with me. I recommend you to read the comic Ushio and Tora, it's really good. At least after a certain cat came into contact with it 10 years ago, it still has a very deep impression of this comic. Meow. The typing feel is gradually recovering, please rest early. The above is Days Meow. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 257. Many readers have realized that the manga titled Ushio and Tora is coming to an end. The white-faced man, who appeared as the villain behind the scenes from the beginning, has now stood in front of the protagonist. After the monster named White-Faced Man is eliminated, this comic will only deal with the aftermath of the war. As the final villain in The Tide and the Tiger, the White-Faced Man's strength is undoubtedly beyond doubt. It has been mentioned in the comics before that the White-Faced Man was still able to calmly leave despite the encirclement and suppression of monsters from the entire eastern continent. Looking at all the comics of the monster era, this strength can undoubtedly rank first. Moreover, according to the setting in the comic Tide and Tiger, the only thing that can kill the White-Faced Man is the beast spear made by Yulong's gathered resentment. As a qualified villain, the White-Faced Man is not like many brain-dead villains who uprightly choose the protagonist who just has the halo of the protagonist, but instead constantly displays his conspiracy and tricks. Under the inducement of the White-Faced Man and the bewitchment of the beast spear, Xiao Chao launched a life-saving blow against the White-Faced Man with anger and hatred. As a result, not only did the White-Faced Man fail to be seriously injured, but the beast spear, the only one that could restrain the White-Faced Man, was shattered. After this chapter was serialized, many readers were shocked. In the end, the protagonist relies on the protagonist's halo to ignite the small universe and enter the explosive state, destroying the enemy with one blow. This is a commonly used plot in current novels and comics. However, in The Tide and the Tiger, the cartoonist Phoenix Inferno is not the same. No such approach was adopted. The result of fighting alone was that the beast spear was destroyed and Xiao Chao was severely damaged. After Ahu, who had just arrived, saw this situation, he fought the battle with the White-Faced Man by himself. A pair of good partners who used to work closely together now have to face the White-Faced Man alone. This kind of plot makes many readers look forward to and sad at the same time. Hey, Cheng, are you sure you are really a man to write the narration like this? Yoshida looked at the comic manuscript in his hand and looked at Makoto Takahashi with a black line on his face. Isn't this obviously telling readers that the following content will be is it a scam? You have been clamoring before. If you are going to draw some dark and heart-wrenching content, do you have to inform me in advance? Now I will directly explain it in the comic. Isn't this okay? Makoto Takahashi stopped painting and squinted. Looking at Yoshida with his right eye, he sighed with an innocent face. My beloved cat, it is rare for me to do a good deed with good intentions. If you want to be a partner of justice, do you really have to bear incomprehensible pain and sin? The following story may make you feel uncomfortable, but for the completeness of the story, I decided to draw it. If you have any resentment or anger, please express your gratitude to everyone in the editorial department of Young Jump. Let's carry out heavenly punishment. Yoshida lowered his head feebly, holding the sketch of the first page of The Tide and the Tiger and chanting, is this a good thing? You definitely did this on purpose. Editor. An obsession that will never give up. Speaking of Aiken, why do you have such resentment? Are you resentful? I just feel a little unhappy. Makoto Takahashi put down his brush, took out a document from the table and threw it to Yoshida, who was drinking tea. This is the information collected by Sabas-chan. Familiar cats, take a look for yourself. You will probably receive the specific news in about a week. This is, poof. Yoshida didn't pay too much attention at first, but when he saw it, he used his mouth to use the preemptive skill T-Rapid Jet. After reading the document carefully, he looked at it in shock. Takahashi Makoto, I'm talking about Cheng, there are personnel changes within the editorial department. According to common sense, we should be the first to get the news about this kind of internal information. Where did Sabas-chan get it from? If you can't do such a small thing, how can you dare to call yourself the butler of His Majesty the Demon God? Sabas-chan served Yoshida black tea again, with a kind smile on his face, and bowed and said goodbye. Mr. Yoshida, this is your black tea, sorry for disturbing me. Oh, thank you, thank you. While being surprised by Sabas-chan's performance, Yoshida also felt the contempt of Makoto Takahashi. He touched the bridge of his nose awkwardly and asked carefully while holding the manga manuscript in his hand, so Makoto, if you do this. Although Lord Commander is a weird uncle with a paralyzed face, he is indeed a weird uncle who really likes comics. And he is usually quite considerate of me, even though he is a weird uncle with an old-fashioned personality and a weird temperament. This comment made the editor-in-chief. It will definitely be very uncomfortable if you hear it. The words specifically emphasize that the editor-in-chief is the monster uncle, 3 times in a row. So as a parting gift, let the commander witness the end of the monster era. I think there is nothing better than this, right? That's it. Ignoring Takahashi Makoto's evaluation of the editor-in-chief, and ignoring Takahashi Makoto's repeated use of a certain word to refer to the editor-in-chief, Yoshida wisely chose to change the topic. So I can understand that, Makoto, you actually don't want the editor-in-chief transferred? But if you write like this. Oh, the wisdom of mortals. This is just part of the plan. Makoto Takahashi pulled the blindfold on his face and sighed helplessly. Although I think the story is actually very ordinary, several people on the assistant side I said that I was very depressed after reading it, and it felt similar to the plot where Platycodon died last time, although I could not add any narration and trick a large number of readers to enjoy it, but this would not bother the commander very much. Can it cause trouble for the commander who is about to leave the organization? And Aiken, are you so kind? And what? I think what you are going to say next is what you really think. Yoshida's 3-part rant appeared again, but this time it seemed to be right. Hey, my cat, humans are very interesting creatures. After thinking that they are mentally prepared, they try all kinds of taboos recklessly. As a result, when it comes to taboos, they find that they are far beyond their expectations. Takahashi Makoto narrowed his eyes, and the kind of evil and devilish smile on his face made Yoshida feel cold. Tell all humans in advance that there is a big pit in the comics, but the arrogant humans not only will not listen to the warnings, but also think that they are ready, and finally jump into the pit one after another. Don't you think it's fun to do this? And only by doing this can I live up to the title of Demon King of Healing and Love of my Phoenix Court. It's just your simple evil taste, Chen, Yoshida complained with a twitch at the corner of his mouth. When Yoshida saw the narration on the front page of the comic manuscript, he thought of Makoto Takahashi's bad record, and instantly increased his attention and prepared himself mentally. But human curiosity cannot be suppressed, not to mention that Yoshida also has the bonus of the family cat identity. Yoshida, who thought he was prepared, began to read the comics carefully with full curiosity. As mentioned before, as the editor-in-chief, he should be exposed to comics earlier than ordinary readers. But everything has 2 sides, and being exposed to comics too early may also fall into the pit too early, so Yoshida was pitted by Makoto Takahashi. The last point, ignoring Yoshida's resentful look, Makoto Takahashi restrained the smile on his face and stared at the comic manuscript in his hand solemnly. This is also a signal to everyone on the cartoonist side, because in the next period of time, there will be no rivals in front of me. The name of Feng Guangai Yuan Xiangjin's madness will truly come to the top of the world with the end of the monster era. Ha 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 ha. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 258. Although Yoshida was very reluctant, in the face of the stubborn Takahashi Makoto, any rebuttal was useless, so the article titled Cartoonist Hohoin Yoshima's Kind Reminder was eventually published in the new issue of Shounen Jump above. Although the cartoonist Hohoin Kuma's bad taste of trapping and killing readers has left a deep impression on many readers, but as Makoto Takahashi said before, human beings are such arrogant creatures. Even Takahashi knows that there is a trap ahead. Cheng has given the tips with good intentions, but in the end, most readers still think that they are fully prepared and jump into the pit without hesitation. After Zyashio lost the beast spear, he was just an ordinary human being without the same fighting power and recovery power as a monster. Facing the most curious nine-tailed monster in history, the white-faced man, Zyashio at this stage was just a scumbag who was defeated by the white-faced man. One tail whipped directly into the sea. After ending his own battle, Ahu, who came to the rescue in time, had to fight against the white-faced man alone. The last chapter of the comic ended here. Although he knew that the next battle would be quite fierce, before the comic came out, Sasaki could only make up for it in his own mind. When Ushio and Toro was serialized at the beginning, many people were quite speechless due to the style of painting. Sasaki was one of them, and he didn't pay much attention to the serialization of this manga. The reason why Sasaki has become a die-hard fan of this comic is because when he talked about the comic with a friend before, the friend jokingly called the white-faced man in Ushio and Tora the most curious nine-tailed monster. Naruto is one of Sasaki's favorite comics. After hearing this from a friend, Sasaki began to read Ushio and Tora with doubts and disdain. Naturally, he got out of hand and has been following the series until now. As for how Zyashio and Ahu should deal with the white-faced man next, Sasaki spent a week thinking about it, but recalling the settings given in the comics, without the beast spear, the white-faced man is invincible. In order to understand the next plot, Sasaki even read the previous comics again. Although it was stated in the comics that the white-faced man was born from the turbid air between heaven and earth, after Sasaki read it carefully, but it gave rise to a lot of doubts. Because in the manga, about the birth of the white-faced man, he was just a ball of gas at the beginning, but when he appeared in Dongjo again in the manga, he appeared as a nine-tailed monster, so Sasaki was very confused. White-faced man, how did the powerful nine-tailed monster appear? After waiting for a week, finally, after the new issue of Shonen Jump was released, Sasaki eagerly turned to the serialization of Tide and Tiger. Just looking at the narration at the beginning, Sasaki his face was speechless. Phoenix Academy is really interesting. He actually encouraged us to go to the editorial office to cause trouble, haha. But the following story, will it make people uncomfortable? It's okay, comics are just comics after all. Like many readers who are familiar with the ferocious nature of Phoenix Academy, Sasaki had a bad feeling about the friendly reminder narration, but this did not stop Sasaki from eagerly reading the manga. Just like what Takahashi, Makoto and Yoshida said, Sasaki, who thought he was ready, began to read the comics, and at the same time entered the countdown to destruction. At the beginning of the comic, the battle between the white-faced man and Ahu was not told. Instead, the main scene was turned to Zyashio, who was sucked into the sea by the white-faced man. Before Xiao Chao fell into coma, he was surrounded by a ball of light. When Xiao Chao woke up, he found that he was living in an unknown village with another identity. The man possessed by Xiao Chao was named Shak Uksha. He had a bulge on his shoulder and looked quite weird. This man also suffered ridicule and disdain from everyone around him because of his weird body, although Xiao Chao always looked on as a bystander. As a mediator, I cannot interfere with this man's words and deeds, but Xiao Chao can feel this man's resentment and dissatisfaction with the people around him. And whenever this man named Shak Uksha feels resentful, the soul of Xiao Chao trapped in his body can feel the dull pain on his shoulder, as if he enjoys this feeling very much. What's going on with this plot? Where's the promised battle? Sasaki complained in confusion while flipping through the comics. Over there, there's a life and death battle with the white-faced man. This kind of boring plot of daily life, wait. How come this Sakaksha's experience is similar to Naruto in Naruto? As the resentment of this Shakuksha continued to grow, his strength gradually grew stronger. After joining the army, he became an invincible being, defeating the invasions of other villages time and time again. However, gaining a very high status and possessing strong strength, these did not make this man escape from his previous predicament, but instead fell into an even more embarrassing situation. The attitude of the people in the village is still the same as before. Although the ridicule and disdain have dissipated, the fear makes the villagers keep a distance from Shakuksha, especially every time Shakuksha tries to be friendly with the villagers. When they got along, the villagers responded with a respectful distance, which made the negative darkness in Shakuksha's heart even more intense. No. This Shakuksha is different from Naruto. Sasaki, who was gradually attracted by the plot of the comic, had a puzzled look on his face, but these villagers are really quite an eyesore. Why can't they? How about tolerance? Seemingly responding to Sasaki's delusion, a little boy named Rama really appeared in the comics, who admired Shakuksha and was willing to follow Shakuksha. Sasaki's eyes lit up, and a vague smile appeared on his face. He had been protecting the villagers like a hero, but he was constantly being ostracized. At first glance, such content was a bit difficult to accept, but then with the appearance of Rama, Sasaki believes that Shakuksha will be able to abandon the darkness in his heart. Aren't you afraid of me? After all, I am a cursed child, and it is because of the curse that I become strong. No, I think Lord Shakuksha is not only very powerful, but also very gentle. Rama showed a childish smile of innocence on his face. I also want to be like Lord Shakuksha in the future. After turning to the next page, Sasaki saw another content. In order to find a way to defeat the white-faced man, the artificial man Kiro, who had fought against Zayashio before, went back hundreds of years through the time monster to find a way to defeat the white-faced man. The sealed beast spear. Although seeing this, Sasaki once again thought of the joint battle scenes in several previous monster comics, but it was a complaint. But when the comic mentioned the main content of fighting the white-faced man, Sasaki still read it quite seriously. What's going on? Sasaki turned a page forward in confusion to make sure there was no page jump. He scratched his head speechlessly. It's a double line. No, it doesn't count. Ahu fighting against the white-faced man, is this a third-line narrative? Hey, I thought I missed some content. Kiro, who was standing next to the beast spear, finally waited for the first person to use the beast spear. That was an uncle in ragged clothes and disheveled hair. This uncle told the story of a hero named Shakuksha in a certain village. Although he had seen it before, Sasaki also guessed that the uncle was the man named Shakuksha, but after listening to Jaksha chatted for a few words about his invincible achievements, but Sasaki still felt excited. Outsiders, when do you think people will become the strongest? It was Sakaksha who nominally asked Kirigo again, but Sakaksha gave the answer himself. It's in my heart. When there is hatred, only hatred can make people stronger. That man hates everything so much, that's why he is so strong. The appearance of Rama before made Sasaki think that Shakuksha would slowly let go of the hatred in his heart, but after seeing Shakuksha's views, Sasaki was extremely confused. Hatred makes people stronger. This statement seemed wrong. According to the current conventions of shounen comics, isn't the reason why people become powerful just because they want to protect something? Recalling the well-intentioned tip given by an unscrupulous cartoonist at the beginning of this episode of The Wave and the Tiger, Sasaki suddenly thought of a certain possibility, hurriedly turned to the next page of the manga manuscript, and then, after turning the next page, Sasaki's face froze. He took a deep breath, closed the comic book tightly, and the corners of his mouth kept twitching. I knew it would be like this, every time at the critical moment, every time, the plot gets stuck. This is the most outrageous thing about the Phoenix Academy. Sorry, adults, I came home late yesterday and there is no update. Sorry. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 259. Alas, Yoshida put down the comic manuscript in his hand, looked at Makoto Takahashi with a livid face, and let out a long sigh. Chen, after reading this chapter that is about to be serialized, I understand why you are here. I've given that hint before. Oh. My beloved cat, please don't look like a lost dog, okay? It's very disturbing to your mood. Makoto Takahashi curled his lips in displeasure, staring at the comic manuscript on the table, with an expectant smile on his face. I am quite kind enough to give you a reminder. Although the inferior nature of human beings that is difficult to change has caused most mortals to ignore it, it is fine. It is meaningless without painful lessons. But when you have endured this after overcoming this kind of pain, humans will gain a tough heart that can't lose to anything. That's right, a tough heart like steel. Although it makes sense, when it comes out of your mouth, it doesn't sound as convincing as Edward's at all. Yoshida spread his hands helplessly, looked at Makoto Takahashi with a strange expression on his face, and suddenly started talking about unrelated things. Come on, the comics of several other cartoonists this time are unexpectedly exciting, especially the comic PCP by Ajuma Menha, which reached the third position this time. Aiken, it seems like you have done it before. The effect of the crowd's ridicule is outstanding. When I came here today, Hattori-kun and Yujiro-kun asked me to ask you, has Dragon Ball's legendary universal wishing machine, the mad manga artist Hohoin Koshin, been prepared? Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Well, is that so? My dear man, everything is as expected. And Makoto Takahashi paused the brush in his hand and looked at Yoshida angrily. My beloved cat, before it seems that I have told you before that the Dragon Ball is not the so-called universal wishing machine. It should be the legendary Great Holy Grail. Hey, I get it. But is this the time now? Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi with a dark look on his face, took out the manga ranking list from his bag, and handed it directly to Makoto Takahashi. The specific situation, read it for yourself. In addition to collecting the comic manuscripts today, the more important thing is to discuss with you how to draw the comics next to improve the ranking of the comics. My beloved cat, haven't I told you before? I have already planned everything. Looking at Yoshida's unbelieving look, Takahashi Makoto curled his lips in displeasure, and look, as those mortal ants struggled desperately, and when they were filled with joy and ready to gain hope, I suddenly jumped out of the grass, shouted Demasha and delivered a fatal blow, giving them endless despair. This incident, my beloved, is a cat. Don't you think this is very loving? Ah, indeed, considering your devilish character, this is a very loving thing. But Chen. Yoshida held his hands and looked at Makoto Takahashi with a serious face. Have you ever thought about it? Now the distance between comics is constantly growing. Even if you can draw amazing content in the future, you will not be able to reverse it in the face of the absolute gap. It seems to make sense. After a moment of silence, Takahashi Makoto nodded and agreed with Yoshida's point of view. My beloved cats, rest assured. The content of this comic chapter in your hand will be the last foreshadowing, and also their last chance. In the name of madness, I swear to bet on the fierce glory of my Phoenix Academy. We'll definitely use the sword of victory to penetrate all enemies and become the great devil who dominates the world. This is the last time. Wait, that means, Yoshida looked at the manga manuscript in his hand and looked at Makoto Takahashi in shock. Chen, you seem to have said before that the last chapter of The Tide and the Tiger, the decisive battle, will be the end of the monster era, which means... That's right. The next step is a thrilling battle. Makoto Takahashi squinted his right eye and looked at the sky outside the window. Only when things die at the most glorious moment can they be named eternal. live forever in the hearts of mankind. All these are the choices of destiny. Ha 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 ha. In response to Makoto Takahashi's kind reminder, many readers, after reading that issue of the manga, said that the mangaka, Hohoin Kuma, thought too much. The story was just a little more depressing, and the effect was not as outstanding as the legend said. It's just, is this really the case? When the new issue of Young Jump was released, many readers felt not only a sense of depression, but also a kind of resentment that could not be vented after reading it. Although the hatred in Sheikokshi's heart began to gradually dissipate as he got along with the Rama siblings, however, a sudden war caused the siblings, who had become the light of redemption, to die one after another. Seeing an important person die in front of him, Sheikokshi's heart was once again controlled by darkness. Hate the ruthlessness of the enemy. Resenting myself for being weak and powerless. Hatred, resentment. Whenever hatred arises in Sheikokshi's heart, he will become stronger. Although there will be pain in his shoulders, Shakuksha, who has hated everything over the years, has become accustomed to the pain in his shoulders, but it's different this time. The pain coming from the bulge of the shoulder was stronger than ever before, because at this time, Sheikokshi's heart was already filled with strong hatred. When people are in despair, they always yearn for hope. Because people are too eager to escape from the abyss of despair, so even if there is a spider thread that can escape the predicament at this moment, people will not hesitate to grab it, even though they understand that the spider thread cannot bear the weight of a person. Even though they know that the spider thread cannot bear the weight of a person, the spider silk will break with just a touch, even if it will lead to falling into the dark abyss of more despair. Shakuksha, filled with hatred in his heart, exerted his super strength, but this still could not destroy the enemy troops far away. At this moment, the bulge on Sheikokshi's shoulder suddenly changed, and a black shadow ran out, annihilating all the enemy troops with one blow, and then flew to the place where Shakuksha lived before. When Sagaksha returned to the village after regaining his mobility, he found that the place where he once lived had been turned into ruins, and a huge monster with 9 tails was flying in the air, and that monster was the character in the entire Tide and Wave, the big villain in Tiger, the big monster white-faced man. You keep hating everything, you keep resenting everything, and you become the best nourishment for my body. Thanks to your resentment, I was able to be born with such a body. As a thank you gift, from now on you will be immortal. The white-faced man did not kill Shakuksha, but continued to bewitch him. If you want to kill me, just continue to hate me, continue to resent me. The white-faced man was born from the body of Sheikoksandi. Many readers have already guessed this plot, so they are not too surprised. The story that really shocked many readers is the last part of this comic. The scene switched to Kirigo's side again, and it was still a multi-line narrative. Although the story of Shakuksha seems to be over, many readers remember that Zyokeo's soul is still trapped in Sheikoksha's body. Kiro, who traveled through time and space and stood by the beast's spear, heard Sheikoksha's story, and before he could say anything, he saw Shakuksha leaping up and lifting the sealed beast hanging in the air. Take off the spear. Like Xiao Chao, when using the beast's spear, the holder of the beast's spear will turn into a long-haired beast with extremely strong combat power, and the same is true for Shakuksha, but let me go. After this Shajiaksha transformed, he turned out to be Ahu. Many readers were almost shocked when they saw the end of this comic. The first user of the beast's spear was actually the vessel from which the white-faced man was born. And after transforming into a beast, Sagaksha is the big monster who once severely injured the white-faced man and is now acting cute next to Zyashio, Ahu, one of the protagonists of the comic. The readers who were in a state of shock seemed to have discovered an anomaly, that is, this comic did not end there. There was a close-up of Xiao Chao and Ahu at the end, with a friendly reminder attached next to it. I know that you are filled with resentment. I must have ignored my previous reminder. I would like to remind you once again that the era of monsters is coming to an end and the exciting battle is about to begin. Are you ready? Crazy cartoonist Phoenix Academy, please join us. Seeing such ridicule, many readers were speechless. In the past, many readers would have dismissed Makoto Takahashi's so-called friendly reminder with good intentions. But thinking back to the fact that they ignored Makoto Takahashi's friendly reminder, they now feel depressed and unable to express their resentment. Many readers are gnashing their teeth and trying to curse an unscrupulous cartoonist who likes to tease readers. Of course, many readers are still looking forward to the next story, the so-called exciting battle. I obviously want to read the next content, but between my words and deeds, I am always casting a curse on you. After receiving a lot of feedback from readers from Sabas-chan, Takahashi Makoto looked at the naturally black the steward said so. Hey, Sabas-chan, this is the so-called textbook tsundere. I've been a little busy lately, so I haven't been able to update enough, and I haven't responded to book reviews in time. I'm sincerely sorry. However, I still want to thank you all for your continued support. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 260. What exactly does the so-called exciting battle mean? Most readers are looking forward to Takahashi Makoto's last message. Of course, some people are also somewhat resistant, thinking that this is just a disguised propaganda by the cartoonist Haruhi Kuma. After all, the entire Uo Tutora has been serialized to this point, and there have been at least 800 battles of all sizes, if not 1,000. Many readers have become accustomed to small-scale scenes, so they are just looking forward to Takahashi Makoto's words, and don't have too much hope. The readers are skeptical, while the cartoonists are nervous as if facing a great enemy. Compared to readers who just read the comics, the people on the cartoonist side are more familiar with someone. Since Takahashi Makoto dares to make such an arrogant declaration in the comics, then the next few chapters of the comics may really have some extraordinary scenes. Collecting Dragon Balls to summon dragons is obviously impossible in reality, but after losing to Makoto Takahashi, you will become a slave of a certain demon king of healing and love for 1 year. Every time the cartoonists think of the brutal bet they signed with Makoto Takahashi, they are determined that they must not lose this duel. Try your best to draw comics, and the cartoonists show high morale. Yachin Mumanai is trying to improve the content, especially Landai, who stays up late to draw in order to show the story of the yellow-haired glasses to the extreme, and improves the quality of his drawings a lot. Fukuda is revising the comics over and over again, and this state of full dedication makes the editor-in-chief Yujiro astonished. Miss Aoki Hong uses her expertise to constantly revise the plot, and the whole room is full of discarded manuscripts. Mr. Yoshida, I can't do it anymore. In comparison, the little otter's fighting spirit only lasted for 1 day, and the whole person collapsed on the table. With a sullen face, he complained to Yoshida, "It doesn't matter if I become God's slave. After all, losing to God is a matter of course." Oh! Hiramaru-kun, is this really okay? Yoshida naturally knew the character of the little otter, and a sinister smile appeared on his face. He gently patted the little otter's shoulder and said with regret, "If you can surpass Aiken this time, I think Miss Aoki Hong will look at you differently, and maybe you can propose to her successfully." Propose, since the little otter became a cartoonist, he has been played around by Yoshida, and this time is no exception. He was listless before, but after imagining some scenes, his eyes flashed with fanaticism. He picked up the paintbrush with high morale and entered the mode of serious painting. "For Yuri-chan, even if I am against God, I must win. Yoshi." In this way, Hiramaru-kun can at least last a week. Yoshida showed a black-bellied smile on his face, glanced at the assistant who was laughing beside him, and did not say what he was thinking. Although there is no chance of winning against Aiken, but this is enough. Time passed quickly with the efforts of all the cartoonists, and it was time for the new issue of Shonen Jump to be released in a blink of an eye. Although he was quite confident in his comics, it was too early to judge who would win and who would lose before the results came out. The only thing he could do was to compare them by reading the comics. "Yoshida, are you going to Mr. Howin now?" Seeing Yoshida's hurried look, Yujiro, who was about to leave, asked in confusion, "Or are you going to Mr. Hiramaru? If you want to go to Mr. Hiramaru, let's go together." "Eh? Yujiro, do you have something to ask Mr. Hiramaru?" Yoshida looked at Yujiro in confusion and raised the comic sample in his hand. "Don't you need to bring this to Nezuma-kun and Fukuda-kun? Don't you know?" Yujiro looked at Yoshida in confusion and explained, "Except for Mr. Howin's intention, besides, several other cartoonists have made an appointment with us to meet in the coffee shop. Didn't Mr. Hiramaru tell you about this?" "Such a thing, no." Yoshida immediately understood what was going on, with a frown on his face. "So that's it, Hiramaru-kun chose to hide it from me in order to date Aoki Hong? Humph. Hiramaru-kun, you are really courageous." Just as Yoshida thought, after the little otter was invited by the silver-haired boy Fukuda, in order to prevent Yoshida from disturbing his meeting with Aoki Hong, he deliberately hid this matter. So when Yoshida appeared with a sinister smile on his face, the little otter jumped up from the chair in surprise. If it weren't for Fukuda's quick eyes and hands to grab it, the little otter might have run away directly. Of course, this is just an episode. The cartoonists and editors gathered together because of Makoto Takahashi's comics. Except for Yoshida, who had seen the comics at the beginning, everyone on the cartoonists and editors' side still don't know what Makoto Takahashi's comics are about. Hee. You will be surprised later. After Yoshida loved the little sea otter, he folded his hands and looked at everyone with anticipation. Although I knew about Takahashi Makoto's plan before, when I actually read the comics, and this serialization of Ushio and Tora is just the beginning. At the beginning of this chapter, Chow and Tiger, it does not tell about Xiao Chow's situation, but directly switches to the side of the white-faced man. After losing the check and balance of the beast's spear, the white-faced man began to cause crazy destruction unscrupulously. Landslides, earthquakes, tsunamis, heavy rains, all the natural disasters that humans fear, all occur because of the crazy behavior of the white-faced man, as if the end of the world is coming, causing humans and monsters in Eastern continent to fall into panic. Faced with the crazy behavior of the white-faced man, even without the help of Xiao Chao, Ahu rushed forward alone, planning to face the white-faced man alone. As the container that gave birth to the white-faced man, Ahu himself has an immortal body. However, as the first user of the beast's spear, because his soul was swallowed by the beast's spear, Ahu lost the memory of the human period, so he did not know that he was related to the white-faced man. The evil fate between the two, but the white-faced man recognized Ahu. The war is about to break out. Just when everyone thought that the next content would be a fierce showdown between the white-faced man and Ahu, they discovered that the comic scene had switched again, to Superboy's side. Xiao Chao finally woke up from the dream of memories, saw the fragments of beast spears scattered around him, and realized in his heart that he could not hit the white-faced man with resentment. As if responding to Zyokyo's wishes, the fragments of the beast spear flew in all directions. Although the white-faced man released a large number of made monsters and performed a large-scale brainwashing technique to make humans and monsters forget the existence of Xiao Chao and Ahu, among the panicked humans and monsters, there were many people who Xiao Chao had helped. Faced with the despair that seemed like the end of the world, many people once thought of the vague figures of Xiao Chao and Ahu. The fragments of the beast spears that had been scattered before also appeared all over the world at this time, directly passing through the heads of humans and monsters, smashing the made monsters that controlled humans and monsters, and allowing the monsters who had been helped by Xiao Chao and Ahu to recall everything before. This kind of content is indeed good, but only to this extent. Looking at the comics in his hands, Brother Fukuda frowned and looked at the cartoonists around him who looked equally confused, with a confident smile on his face. If Aiken is only like this, then we will definitely win this time. Although he had severely damaged the white-faced man 800 years ago, Ahu is now at a disadvantage. No, the correct way to say it is that Ahu is too reluctant to fight against the white-faced man alone. Although he successfully attracted the attention of the white-faced man and prevented the white-faced man from continuing to wreak havoc, the price he paid was naturally being hit hard by the white-faced man again and again. Especially after the last confrontation, Ahu was hit in the chest by the white-faced man. The big hole sank into the sea. No one can stop me now? Ha 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 ha. Seeing Ahu sink into the sea and not reappear, the white-faced man laughed arrogantly, and when he was about to continue to destroy, a black shadow suddenly appeared from the clouds, standing in front of the white-faced man. Oh? Is that really so? I feel like I'm a little excited today. A young man with long flowing hair, holding a demon sword on his shoulder, stood on a floating giant ship, with people of all sizes gathered behind him. Monster, this rich monster energy can even turn me into a monster during the day. Looks like he's a guy who can put up a good fight. There are so many ants that don't know whether to live or die. A body bigger than a giant ship was suspended in the air. The white-faced man dismissed the monsters in front of him, but it's not bad as a pastime. Tisk, 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 it seems that you have been underestimated. Holding the demon sword in his hand tightly, the man with long flowing hair showed a strong fighting spirit on his face. Young man, you are going to do it. Let this be disgusting. Let's meet this guy, the Hyakuki Yaka of the Nulayan group. The young man wearing a feather coat with the word fear sewn on it and holding a demon sword in his hand is none other than the third generation of the Nuragumi, Rikuo Nura. Nura Rikushin, who was holding a demon sword, led his demons and killed the white-faced man directly. This is, the protagonist of Slippery Ghost, right? Except for Eiji Arizuma and Ajuma Menha, both the cartoonist and the editor were completely surprised. Although this chapter of the comic ended here, even though Takahashi Makoto had also used through the fusion method, but the character who suddenly entered at this time seems to have an unexpected effect. That's the expression. In response to everyone's surprise, Yoshida showed a satisfied smile on his face, completely forgetting that when he saw the scene before, he had a look on his face that was even more surprised than everyone else. Yoshida tapped the table lightly, and after attracting everyone's attention, he said with a proud face, I would like to remind you that Cheng has said before that the manga Tide and Tiger is the end of the era of monsters. Yo! This scene has just begun. Sorry for the late update tonight. By the way, which fellow Taoist is going through a tribulation near a certain cat's house? The lightning and thunder weather didn't end until 10:30. Judging from the situation, it seems that the tribulation failed. Can you change the time next time and try after a certain cat is updated? A certain cat said gratefully, meow.